Okay, so we're going to go over just a few things here today. I wanted to start with the stages of clay. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. Okay, so I had posted this video for you guys to talk about the stages of clay, and I also was just able to get my video that I had done about it back from the person who recorded the video. So I'm excited about that, so I'll post another video about this as well. But it's really important to know our stages of clay so that we know when we can and can't do things, okay? So last module, I had the video about how to score two pieces of clay together, that you do the scratches and then you add some water or you add some slip. Now that's one of the most important things I'm going to teach you guys, right? So the slip is your clay body with some water added to it, and then you mix it up really well. And it should be kind of the consistency of thin icing. So it should be like goopy, but you should be able to spread it like butter or icing, something like that. And the importance of that is that we're trying to integrate two pieces together, right? So we have all those scratches, and those are going to intertwine like our fingers, right? And that little bit of water or slip is going to help all of that stick together, so that as the clay starts to shrink, they don't just shrink apart from one another. So lots of times you put two pieces of clay together and you think, okay, that's going to stay, looks great. But then after it dries, it all just crumbles and falls apart. And that's because it didn't integrate. Those fingers didn't connect and hold on. So the scratching and that slip is very, very important, okay? And so slip in our stages of clay, that's our most liquidy type of clay, right? Has the most water in it. And then as we come up and the liquid lessens in our clay, then we have our regular clay body, what you guys picked up from the studio, right? It's in a nice block. You can slice the pieces off. You can wedge it easily. That's what we actually call it a plastic clay body. But what that refers to is that it's workable. You can manipulate it. You can roll it into a coil. You can bend it. If it has a lot of plasticity, it will bend without cracking or breaking, and that's a good thing. So that's our clay body. That's our workable plastic clay. And then after that, after we've been working with something for a while and it's exposed to the air and the atmosphere, this can happen quickly on a hot weekend like this coming weekend, or a little more slowly if you live in a really humid area, right? But as our clay starts to dry, it's going to become what we call leather hard. And at leather hard, you know, when clay is soft and we can pinch it and manipulate it, we can change the shape very easily. But at leather hard, it's much more difficult to change the shape. It's starting to hold the form of where we put it, okay? So if I had a little cup, I wouldn't be able to squeeze it into an oval form, right? It would stay in that nice round form. So at soft leather hard is the perfect time to add things on. So when you think about your upcoming project, we're going to be making these biomorphic forms. And we're going to make little pinch pots, right? And that is all going to happen when the clay is nice and soft. And then we're going to have to score our pinch pots together. And we want that to happen either when it's soft or in that soft leather hard stage, okay? Once it starts drying out even more and it becomes hard leather hard, you'll see that it's going to start to, the color of the clay is going to start to change. It's going to become a little bit chalky as it starts to dry out. And once it looks kind of dull and chalky, you can no longer add anything back onto it. We've missed the window. There needs to be moisture present to put those two pieces of clay together. So that's really important to know for this upcoming project, because if you start working on it and then you have to walk away from it and it's a small project with small little elements, it could dry out really quickly, right? So you want to keep it wrapped up and in plastic the whole time you're working on it, so that you can continue each stage of it. Because once it reaches hard leather hard, there's no more adding on. And the stage after that is what's called greenware or bone dry. And at the greenware bone dry stage, your piece is so fragile. It just wants to break and fall apart on you. You're gonna have to be so careful with it. So I recommend we try to keep our things a little bit wet if we can, even into November when we take it over to the studio, because we're gonna have a better chance of driving it in the car to the studio if it still has a little moisture in it. Okay, so don't rush to let your things dry out, because they're going to become very fragile and very difficult to transport back to the studio. Once we have our work at the studio and Michael puts it through the first firing, which is called the bisque firing, then we're going to have what's called bisqueware. And that has now been clay that's gone through its chemical transition, and it's become ceramic. It's still porous. When we get it wet, it'll still absorb that water like a sponge, but we can never break it down enough that we can use it again as plastic clay. Okay, that first firing is the transition point of where you can no longer recycle the clay and use it for projects again. And then after the bisque firing, we go ahead and we glaze our pieces, and they would normally be fired again with glaze on them. But for this particular class, we're just going to do one firing, and then we're going to paint or use alternate surfaces. So we're going to basically stop after the bisqueware, and then we're going to use different materials. Okay, so the important takeaway there is that you have to have moisture present in order to put two pieces of clay together. So you got to attach the soft leather hard stage. And if something does dry out, please remember that it is so incredibly fragile. Okay, I can't stress this enough. In fact, I was just on the phone the other day with a friend, and she works in a ceramic studio, and I'm trying to talk to her about something. And then all of a sudden, someone in the background just started yelling and crying. And it was because her piece was greenware and it broke. And she's been doing ceramics for years, so it happens to the best of us. So we got to be really careful once our work starts to dry. So I wanted to go over that just to make sure you guys are all aware of the stages of clay. It's very important to know. And then when we're working with the clay, you know how to store it, because we're not going to get everything done in one sitting, right? So the softer plastic for storing your work works better. You'll notice that the clay bag that the clay comes in is kind of a rigid plastic. It's not really soft. It's not going to bend to all the curves of your form. So if you can get dry cleaning plastic, that's really good. I think maybe Chaffee Studio gave you some plastic if you got all your free materials. So you guys are really lucky there. If you didn't get your free materials, then even just the white, soft plastic garbage bags for like a kitchen garbage can, that plastic is really good as well for covering work. And so when you cover your work, just make sure you get as much air out of the area between your form and the plastic, right? If the bag's just pillowed over the form, all that air is still in there drying the piece out. You want to really get that plastic right up to the form you're working on, okay? And if you have some type of plastic container, I showed it in the video, you know, like those plastic containers that we store extra clothes in and all kinds of stuff, right? You can store your work in there, wrapped in plastic. It's going to slow down the drying even more. So that'll be really great and convenient for you guys. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about recycling your clay, because you are going to create scraps, little extra pieces that you're not going to use, and they're going to dry out while you're working. And that clay, even though it has dried, it can be used again. So collect all of that clay, let it completely dry, and then get a little container of water and take your dry clay and pour it into the water. That's really important, because it's easier for clay to break down and be usable again if the dry clay goes into the water. If you just pour water over the dry clay, it absorbs it in a different way, and those pieces become hard instantly, and it's hard to stir it and mix it back up. So it's a little easier to go dry material into water. And if you can break that clay up a little bit so it's tiny little pieces, like I'll pound mine, I'll put it all in a big clay bag, and then I'll pound it with a hammer or a rolling pin just to break it up and crumble it up, and then I'll put it in the water. And it's good to wear your face mask when you do that, because that's going to create clay dust, and that's what we don't want to be breathing. So extra use for your COVID-19 face mask. How lucky are we that we all have a face mask available? All right, so that's how you're going to recycle your clay. And once you've added that dry clay to that water, I let it sit for a day, and I pour it'll settle out, and I'll pour the extra water off the top, and then you can use that clay again as soon as it's a consistency that you like. So that's going to help save on some money for clay if you kind of keep track of your scraps and either recycle them or don't let them dry out in the first place. Okay. So I kind of broke up the assignment into 2 chunks. So for the rest of the semester, every time we have a new project, we will do sketches for the project to kind of generate some ideas and get the inspiration rolling. And then after that, after you've turned your sketches into me and you and I have emailed about them, then what you'll do is you'll start working on your project. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and approve the biomorphic sketches. I'm going to let you guys just jump in and work, but in the future projects, I'll actually give you approval before you'll start with your clay. So I included this page in here just in case you've never sketched before and you wanted a little how-to on sketching. It's in here, and we can talk more about this one-on-one if you still have more questions, but we'll be sketching for all of our assignments to generate ideas. Okay, so now for our biomorphic forms. Let me grab something real quick. Got a couple samples. All right, so for your biomorphic forms, we're doing a couple things here. We are learning the pinch technique. Okay, so you're going to have your clay and you're going to watch the pinch how-to video, and you're going to pinch out some forms. We're also going to be working with some pattern. So that was why we did the drawing of the pattern and playing around with some textures on clay, because I would like, as you produce these forms, to utilize some texture. So we're going to learn those 2 things. And I also want to talk about biomorphic art and abstract art, okay? So the idea behind biomorphic art, as you can probably guess from the name bio, if we think about biology, that's the study of life, right? So bio and morphic. So bio, again, life, and then morph is combining 2 things together, okay? So when we're thinking about biomorphic art, we're looking at items, objects, or images that are looking and inspired by life and that are morphing those items together, right? So when I make something for this project, it's not that it has to look like a kangaroo, right? It's that it's inspired by a kangaroo. So maybe it has some element that a kangaroo has, but it doesn't have to be the entire kangaroo, okay? So we're gonna abstract these forms, we're gonna simplify them or edit them so that we're just taking the most interesting parts that we think are the most interesting. So this is subjective, it's your choice, what's most interesting. And you're gonna combine those. So you might use the scales of a fish on a cactus, or you might use the tail of the kangaroo mixed with a germ virus. Maybe that's how the germ virus gets around, is on the tail of the kangaroo, right? Anything can be mixed together. And the study of life that we're looking at can be anything from microscopic germs and bacteria all the way up to the largest mammal out there, right? Anything living. So we have a lot of things to be inspired by. And then we just want to start combining those in interesting ways. So I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second so you can see my camera. So here's a little guy that I made with this project. So I first made the body as one pinch pot, okay? So that was kind of a larger oval pinch pot. And then I made a tiny little pinch pot for this little tail down here. And I scored and I put those two together. And then I went ahead and I started texturing. And then I decided that my little guy needed some arms. So I made him two little arms, right? And I put a little pattern on his arms, and on his body I did this whole stamping pattern. So this is why we were playing around with textures last week, so that we can incorporate some of these. And this one, because I stamped it when it was still quite wet, the stamping came through on the inside. So here it's little divots, little holes, and on the inside it's little bumps. Hopefully you guys can see that through the Zoom camera. Sometimes it doesn't focus real well. Now when you look at this, what kind of animal is it? What kind of living object? Or is it a human?
Fishes.
It's kind of fish-like, yep. It's kind of plant-like. I can see, you know, like the tops of a plant petal, maybe around the top. And this has like a pine cone or an acorn shape to me, right? So it's not identifiable. You can't say this is an aardvark, but you can see that it's definitely inspired by some type of living life form, right? Hopefully.
Yeah. Yes.
So here's a more simple one that I made. This is just one single pinch pot that dried out before I could attach another pinch pot to it, right? So I just made a real loose organic form. And so even though we're talking about the pinch pot technique, it's not really the shape of a pot, is it? It's not like a teacup. So you get to be very experimental with this project, right? And so my idea, there's kind of two ways to tackle the project. One way would be to sketch out your idea and make exactly the two pinch pot forms that you need to attach them together to create your creature, right? That's one way to attack it and finish that whole piece. Another thing you could do is you could just sit and make a whole bunch of different shaped pinch pots. Make some that are kind of oval, make some that are round, make some that are small, make some that are bigger. And then just start to play with them and see how you like them together, right? What is it like when they stick together this way? What's it like when they stick together this way? You know, how can they go together? And when I say you have to stick two together, that's the minimum, right? You could decide you want to make 50 little miniature suction cup pinch pots and stick it all over another form. You can do that if you want to, right? You can have a lot of fun and just play with all these different options, right? So two ways to, you know, tackle the project is have a plan and make that creature, or make a whole bunch of pinch forms and play around and have some fun and see what you get along the way. And once you get some forms that you like, then go ahead and start applying some texture to the surface, right? Maybe in the exercise where we played with texture, maybe you found something you really like, or maybe these forms are going to inspire you to try another kind of texture, which you can do that too. Okay? So in the end, you're going to have 3 little forms or creatures that you're going to hand in, okay? That means you're going to have to pinch at least, bare minimum, 6 pinch pots so that you can stick 2 together to create a creature. Okay? And I think I said, let me just double check. Oh, I didn't say it in yours. Doesn't look like. Oh, that's for the sketching. Okay, let me go one more page here. I'm double checking myself on what size I was going to have you make them. I think I said 6 inches.
You did.
So the finished form should be at least 6 inches in one direction. Okay, so the key there is one direction. So your piece could be designed to lay down, and it could be 6 inches from tip to tip. Or it could be something that stands up, and then it would be 6 inches from bottom to top, right? Or maybe a diagonal, but 6 inches in some direction. Okay. Now, with all that talking, Kathy, did I answer your question, or you do still have one?
I still have one. So how about the sketching? So we just drop the picture and then just make it, right? Or so any kind, right? Or the leaf, the animal, or
Yes, it's really a wide open project. Some of our other projects, you know, are going to be much more contained in idea. This one, because it's any living life form, is wide open. So one thing you might do, grab a piece of paper here. Sure where my clipboard is, but we'll make this work. Okay, so what you might do is when you're ready to sketch, you might just sit and think for a little bit, and then you might just start to play with some shapes and go, okay, so if I made a little pitch pot that sat on an angle, maybe it sits like that. What could I do to this to make this interesting? Okay, well, maybe I could attach something up here. So maybe I'll do more of an oval one that comes to a point, more like my pod shape or my leaf shape pinch pots. And maybe I'll attach that there. And then maybe I'll decide, well, maybe this needs a leg here. So maybe this will be some type of leg that comes down. Maybe this has little paws. So maybe there's an arm that comes off of here. And maybe this actually has some sort of face. So you can just play for a while, kind of play with shapes.
so we don't need to color it, right?
No,
Or
no color needed. Just pencil. Pencil.
Okay.
Whichever you
And then we don't need to drop it perfectly, right? Or
no, nothing perfect about it.
okay.
This is just to like really fast ideas, right? To play and go, oh, I like it, or oh, I don't like that one. On to the next one, right?
Okay.
Do you actually mind if I can see your picture a little bit closer up to the camera? Okay, cool. Now I can see. All right, thank you.
So, you know, you're not tied into having to make exactly what's on the paper, but I just want you to use it as a moment to stop and think about shapes and how they might go together. Okay?
So I forgot how many sketching 6 or
let's go back and look.
I think it was at least 5.
I think
5?
Minimum of 5.
5 mixed together for one object, or
No, 5 different
shape? 5
sketches.
different sketches.
Sketches, just 5 different sketches. So 5 sketches like this. So it can have any number of shapes, that's up to you, but 5 sketches.
Like, oh, it's
Like
the arm is the one sketching, and then the sock is one, and then we made together. That's of 6 or 5, some kind of like this.
Yeah.
Or we have to drop a 6 subject like together.
Yeah, so for the sketching, you're gonna draw 5 creatures.
And then make a one picture. What make a one? I don't.
So is it okay if I show mine Okay,
Thank you so
so
much,
here's
Rachel.
here's three that I did just messing around, and as you can see, I'm not an artist, but you know, here's one. Here was another one.
Uh-huh.
Here's another one. So they're just
Oh.
I might have some others. I think I did here was on this paper, like I had like different views, you know, kind of an idea, like from the top, from the side, like a fish face on it. This, you know, I have no idea what this is, but there's eyes at the top. There's two forms. So just playing with the idea of the shapes. Each one is different.
So one object have three forms or no? Just
So for the sketching, you can sketch however many forms in there you want, right? But you're gonna have 5 sketches. So 5 papers to hand in.
5? Oh.
For
Just
the
5
I thought
pictures.
it's I thought it's a 5 single part made together, like just one picture. No.
5
No.
pictures for the drawings. And then
Oh.
when it comes time to making with the clay, you're gonna make 3 items.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
And those 3 items are gonna have a couple pinch forms going together. Okay?
Okay. Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So can I, Kathy, I didn't like stress about it at all. Basically, I just sat down and kind of just played. So they're super primitive. I just tried to think of different things and put it together. And you know, it's just like if you cut out different parts from different places and then just jumbled them up. As long as there's 2 pinch pot or like bigger components in it, and then you know, at the minimum, that's it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So 2 pinch part made together, that's fine, right?
Yeah,
Or
like
one pinch part and then I make other thing like arm, like leg, kinda, or
yeah. So like just on my example, like that, I was just messing around. Like this could be, the head could be a pinch pot, the body could be a pinch pot, right?
oh,
And
okay.
then like I was thinking like maybe like tree roots at the bottom for like the base, and maybe make the beak try to look like a piece of wood too. And then I have sort of like flower petals and leaves. So I'm just mixing up things, but I have the 2,
Pinch part.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
For just for
Thanks. Yeah. You have nice picture.
So one thing you can do for yourself. So some people get stumped by this project and they're just not quite sure how to mix 2 things together. And one thing that you could do is you could give yourself a list. Okay, so I've given myself a list. And hopefully I have my camera the right way. Can you guys read that? Are the letters the right way? Okay, so you could give yourself a list and then you could say, okay, so I'm gonna try to mix a tree and a cat, and I'm gonna try to mix a rose and a dog, and I'm gonna try to mix a hedgehog and a cactus. Or you could go, I'm gonna try to mix a tail and a beak. I'm gonna try to mix fur and petals, and I'm gonna mix scales and a body.
Oh, that's more easier, huh?
So it's a good way for some people to kind of break it down, to think about it.
Okay, good idea.
Less options that way. How are you doing, Bria? Do you understand the assignment? Do you have any questions?
I'm gonna try it out tonight and see how it goes. I'm glad that you did go ahead and explain everything, because as I was reading it, I was really confused too, and I feel like I have more understanding of the pinch. What was it called? The pinch. Yeah, and the sketches. I wasn't sure like exactly. Now I get it. I'm gonna do what you said. I'm gonna make a list of 5 objects and just play with it, like Joshua was saying, and just see where I end up at.
Yep, it should be fun. Shouldn't be stressful, because since you're morphing things together, you're just mixing things together. You can't go wrong.
All right, I'm gonna take your word for it.
Except remember, living things, right? So you can't put a skateboard in there, right? It has to
Right.
be things.
Okay, cool.
All right. So let me double check if there's anything else I wanted to go over in the module. All right, no, that looks good. I think I basically covered everything for this week. Okay.
Can I just double check something? So because I did practice a little bit trying to make pinch pots, because but I took the word pot kind of literally. So what if I understand right from today is that it doesn't need to be anything round or even oblong like your video showed. It could be a lot of other shapes too, as long as you're using the same technique of starting with like a ball or egg or something of clay and then using your fingers to manipulate it.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
And for lots of these shapes, you know, if I pick this guy up again, he started off a little more pot-like, and then after I had him made, I smoothed him with my thumb, right, to make him a little longer, to kind of stretch him out. So when your clay is still wet, you have an opportunity to fold and to kind of pull and stretch and smooth with your thumb like this, or with your fingers, you can kind of grab it and pinch it out. You have lots of opportunities. And I believe in the demo on the video, I also paddled with a wooden spoon. So that's a nice way. If you want something that's really round, you can paddle it round with the spoon, which is really nice. But yeah, one thing you'll learn about me is first off, ceramics starts from a functional tradition, right? Where the majority of what was made early on were pots. They were vessels of some kind. And so I also started as a potter. So I will often refer to even my own sculptures as pots. So we are a sculpture class. And so we're gonna use that term pot or some of these techniques, you know, we're going to use it loosely because we're going to alter it into sculpture.
Thank you.
So we're going to work on this week, and I believe the sketches are due by Thursday night. Yeah, the sketches are due on Thursday night. And then, and I'll try and give you guys some feedback on them. And then the biomorphic forms are due September 13th. So you actually have like a week and a half, maybe a little bit more. Yes, Joshua?
I know you said that you want us to take pictures in during the process. So I wondered if you could, what stages do you want to see pictures at?
Well, I would say, you know, it could be interesting if you took a picture of the pinch forms before you stuck them together. And then, you know, as you get those forms together, you could take another picture. And then you'll add details on, or you'll texture it. After you get that done, you could take a picture. That should probably almost be your finished picture by that point.
Thank you.
And we need to make it dry, made them dry and then take a picture, or It doesn't matter.
No, keep them wet. Try and
Red.
keep them wet, because if you take a picture along the way and I see something wrong with it that I know it's going to crack or break, I'll email you and let you know, and then you can fix it. So
Okay, thank you.
it's best to keep things wet until you get final approval from me to let it dry, because as long as things are wet, we have options to fix things. But once things dry, it's done. We can't do anything else. Okay, so the longer we keep it wet, the better.
And then we after picture we can recycle or make together or no? Just keep the.
No. You gotta keep it, because we're gonna take
Oh,
it back to the studio to be fired, and then we'll paint them with color at the end of the class.
oh, okay.
So we're saving these all the way into November.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to mention, and this is important for everybody to know, is that when air is trapped in clay and it heats up in the kiln, when we take this in to be fired, hot air expands. And so if we trap air in our form anywhere, it's going to explode the form in the kiln. So on this little guy, I made him, and then I took this other pinch form and I capped the base of this with it, which means there's some air trapped inside of here. Okay, so that would be a bad thing if I left it just like that. That means this would explode off of the rest of the form. So what I have to do is I have to take a needle tool or maybe like a toothpick, and you need to poke a hole into that form to release the air. Okay, so I hid my hole because I put this little hole texture all the way around here, so you can't see which one of my holes is the hole that goes the whole way through. But one of these guys, I can't find it right now, one of these guys goes the whole way through so that the air can get out of there. Okay, so if you close up two forms and you completely seal them like a pillow, then you have to poke a hole. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So, and the hole only has to be the size of that toothpick or the size of your needle tool. It can be small, and you can hide it. Okay, so I think that covers all the important details. And we should be having lots of fun with this project. And then over the weekend, again, just like last weekend, I'll get your next module up with more information. But remember, you've got a few days to do your sketches, and then you have extra time to work on the project, right? We can't finish everything in 1 week. It's too much, right? So there's some projects that are going to go over the course of 2 or 3 weeks.
I have one more question. Sorry. If we store them in a plastic bin, and they're covered with plastic, I mean, would it be a good thing to, let's say, if you have I don't know, some water that's in a container that's open in there in the box with it, is that helpful to add humidity?
It is helpful because it will create that extra humidity. So you could do a container of water, or you could do a sponge that had some water soaked into it.
Okay.
But don't sit the work on the sponge. Keep the sponge off to the side and the clay to the other side.
What do you usually, do you leave your pieces on a wear board or something, or do you just wait till they're dry enough? What do you set them on when they're in those containers?
That's a good question. If I've got room to put the whole board in, I will put the whole board in just because it's easier. If the piece doesn't allow for the board and the piece, then I'll carefully put the piece up. Now, in the case of these forms, you know, they don't always have a perfect place to sit. You know, they kind of weeble wobble around. So if you want to do something, you could stabilize these by making, you know, a circle coil out of clay and then have a little place where it rests and it sits so it doesn't fall over on you. And you don't have to attach that. It could just be something that it just rests in when you're not working on it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end the recording because I think we've covered all the important information, and I will post this. So if you guys want to go back and listen again to anything that I said, if you have a question, maybe you wake up in the middle of the night and are like, what did she say? You can go back and listen to it too.
Thank you so much.